Good morning. This is Shelby Law with the Great Basin Prescribed Fire and Smoke Briefing for Wednesday, March 13th, 2024. Taking a look here first at our precipitation, we have precip for the past 7 days on the left and precip percent of normal for the past 30 days on the right. We did have a pretty active storm track across the north over the past week, bringing some much needed precipitation to those areas. And our percent of normal for the past month is actually above average for southern Idaho and western Wyoming. If we look at snow for the past 72 hours here, we can see some precip, or that snow coming into western Idaho, western Wyoming, and the higher elevations of northeast Nevada and Utah. So good news there for mid-March. And our snowpack values are above average, average or above average for all of the Great Basin. That's the first time this year we've seen that with that recent precip over Idaho, allowing those values to come up closer to normal. This morning's satellite imagery is showing a low pressure trough moving through the Great Basin today, bringing some lingering snow showers mainly to eastern portions of the area and somewhat cooler temperatures, slightly below normal certainly below normal for the time of year, but we will warm up as we head through into the second half of the work week. Okay, so for today we do have that low in place over much of the Great Basin. Our ventilation rates are really high today. Transport winds are elevated across much of the Great Basin with gusts 30 miles an hour or so or higher in some of these pink areas, and mixing heights are really high today as well. Our temperatures again are in some areas below normal, in some areas closer to normal, but highs out there are going to be mainly in the 40s across the region today. Probability of precipitation shown here on the left. Again, the chance for those snow showers is going to be mainly over the eastern half of the Great Basin. Tomorrow that low begins to close off, and this closed low is actually going to be hanging around the southern half of the Great Basin through the first part of next week. But what that's going to do is continue to bring some winds to portions of Utah as that low kind of makes its way south over the triple point here of California, Nevada, and Utah. Ventilation rates remain high tomorrow. Again, looking at the transport winds, really high tomorrow as that low moves south. Some areas out there with really gusty winds are going to be over the higher elevations of Utah, eastern Utah, right along the front. Even Nevada has some gusty winds and along the Sierra front as well. So pretty windy day really across much of Nevada and Utah tomorrow. And mixing heights are quite high as well. On Friday, more of the same. We see that closed low remaining in place across the southern tip of the Great Basin. Some wraparound moisture will keep some storms in the forecast, especially across the southern half of the Great Basin, where we'll see clearing across the northern half, clearing and some warming across the northern half. Ventilation rates remaining high across Utah and Nevada, and decreasing a bit across the north. Winds are still going to be pretty high on Friday, especially along the higher elevations in Utah because of that closed low. We could get some really strong downslope winds in those favorite areas along the front here. And then some gusty winds continue across the mountains of northern Nevada, or across northern Nevada. Mixing heights remain high over Utah and Nevada on Friday, but a little bit lower across Idaho. And the forecasted clearing index for Utah for the next few days is pretty good, with those strong winds and high mixing heights for today, tomorrow, and Friday. The 3-day precipitation totals are shown here. We can see most of the precipitation is going to be over Utah, and particularly eastern and southern Utah and southern Nevada and the Arizona Strip. Drier across the north and west as that low tracks down into the southern Great Basin here. As we head into the weekend, that closed low remains in place, keeping somewhat stormy conditions across the south, but really drying out and warming across the north. Ventilation rates decreasing a bit across the north. On Sunday, we start to really see this ridge trying to build into the west coast and even up into the Pacific Northwest and Idaho, northern Nevada. So warming and drying continues on Sunday across the northern 2/3 of the Great Basin. That closed low still in place over the southwest, just keeping things a little bit cloudy, slightly cooler, although warmer compared to today. and some storms in place down there. Ventilation rates staying elevated somewhat because of that low across Utah and Nevada, but decreasing, continuing to be somewhat lower across the north. And that closed low hanging around into Monday, so more of the same across the south, but we do see that ridge strengthening a bit across the west coast, trying to push that low out. So warming and drying across the northern 2/3, 3/4 of the Great Basin. Ventilation rates really decreasing across the north as that ridge builds in, but staying somewhat elevated across the south. And that closed low remains in place on Tuesday as well. So more of the same, warming and drying across the north, a little bit of storminess across the south, or far southern Nevada and southern Utah. The precipitation for days 4 and 5, here we're looking at Saturday and Sunday for the most part. We can see drying, clearing across the northern 3/4 of the Great Basin, with that closed low across the far southern Great Basin, and then the desert southwest. We'll see precipitation chances really just over the higher elevations of southern Utah, far southern Nevada, and the Arizona Strip. The extended forecast for March 20th through the 26th puts above normal temperatures in place over the Great Basin and continues to forecast above normal precipitation as we head into the third week of March. And this concludes today's briefing. Please check back on Friday for the latest updates.